I got into MIT Sloan Business School as a senior at Caltech. I got in fully planning to attend in the fall of this year, actually. And I realized the value is not that high for me anymore.
But the thing about working in corporate is that you're like a number on a page, right? Someone could snap your fingers and fire you in 2 seconds, and then you're screwed.
The person I thought I was is actually completely different. It costs like $250,000 and you lose income, almost quote unquote a waste of money. You should be in charge of your own destiny.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
Amy, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back.
Why did you turn down your admission at MIT Business School, one of the top business schools in the entire world?
For context, I got into MIT Sloan Business School as a senior at Caltech. So senior year of college, you get to apply to MBA programs through the deferred MBA program, where once you get in, you just have to have 2 to 5 years of full-time work experience before you matriculate. I got in fully planning to attend in the fall of this year, actually. I was planning my whole life around it, literally was looking at apartments for Boston. I went to Welcome Week and everything. But something felt off because in this period of deferral, I built my own business. And business school is where a lot of people go to create their business or basically pivot their career. But when I went to Welcome Week, I realized that a lot of the people there, especially for MIT Sloan, they're there to start a startup or build a business. And then everyone was excited to hear about how I've already built a business. And then I talked to other entrepreneurs like yourself, and I realized like actually the value is not that high for me anymore. That like the person I thought I was is actually completely different. And so I cannot keep having the same mindset and expectation of attending business school like I did when I first applied. Another factor is that, to be honest, I was expecting to get a scholarship. So pro tip for anyone considering a deferred MBA, I'd actually recommend not to, because they promise that they will consider you for a scholarship the year before you matriculate. However, huge business lesson, I don't have leverage. No one has leverage when you got in and you plan to attend and you pay annual deposits every year. So when it came time to get scholarships, so many regular applicants with, objectively lesser stats, kind of lesser experience than me, they all got like 90K scholarships and I didn't get a single thing. I talked to other deferred applicants, they didn't get anything either. And I just realized like, why am I putting myself at the mercy of institutions again when I've proved to myself that I can create my own forms of success? The final third factor I'd say is something I've really learned this year, which is a huge unlock, is learning the value of money and what to actually spend it on. So yesterday, I was talking with some friends and they're like, wow, I feel like everyone would applaud you for attending MIT Sloan. But with close friends, they're like, oh, I know this is the best decision for you. And that's because MIT Sloan is something very recognizable. And it's, a degree, like even my parents and like aging grandma are like, oh, get more degrees, just rack up those degrees, and you'll be fine. But it costs like $250,000 and you lose income. Like I would be losing a lot of income from the time I spend at MIT Sloan. So to me, it's like almost quote unquote a waste of money. And so I was so willing to spend this much money just for a degree when I wasn't willing to spend money on my business and like pay for coaching or like programs to learn specific skills that I would actually need. And that was a huge light bulb moment where I'm like, whoa, I could spend all that money and time instead on my business. Plus, I do feel a lot of relief that I saved 2 years of my life because I am 26 now and I feel like, I have to be mindful of timelines.
I feel like it's an interesting mind brainwashing where people are willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on universities. But then when you ask them to buy like a $20 info product online, they're reluctant to spend that money, right? So why do you think people are willing to actually blow so much on a university, but then when it comes to spending money in other areas like hiring or delegation or coaching or information that actually applies to like your day-to-day running of your business? Why do you think people struggle to actually spend that money?
Yeah, so I think for undergrad, first of all, I think it's still worth to get a college degree. In any case, you still build network experience, and that's when you kind of have a taste of the real world, like not living in your parents' home and things like that. Plus, the value of college is where you decide to go and the environment you choose to have. So something I always tell people is like, you still need to work hard in school to get yourself in a good college, not because of the degree or name itself, but because this is one of the few chances in life that you can choose your environment. And as James Clear and a million other self-improvement gurus say, your environment is more important than motivation. This could literally change the entire trajectory of your life. So attending Caltech was definitely one of the best decisions I made in my life. With that being said, students, they don't have a lot of money, right? And so the only money they realize they can spend to quote unquote like change their lives is college, because that's what everyone says. After graduating college, I think it's brainwashing, just like you said, right? Where people, especially the older generation, they just believe degrees are all you need. But the value of the degree is shrinking more and more now, especially with the rise of AI. And so when you look at entrepreneurs or people who have jumped outside of the box, they're going to be the rare minority to realize, hey, I'm actually going to spend money on my business. And so that's why there aren't that many entrepreneurs or successful business owners. I think it takes a special type of person to turn down a degree that everyone else thinks is prestigious and, you know, makes you feel good inside, right? It takes a lot of self-belief and just like true understanding of who you are and what you want out of life to be courageous enough to do that. And to me, it's interesting because now as time goes on, after I made this decision, I was originally very conflicted, but now I feel like, oh, obviously I would do that. Like, why would I go to MIT slow? Like, that's so like, why would I do that, you know?
I think a big unlock or realization people have is when they start to realize that universities are actually a business. And they're an old business, like what Harvard was created in 1600s or something. So they've been around for a long time, a lot of these like brand name schools. But at the end of the day, they are a business. They have a $50 billion investment endowment portfolio that they're allocating to random industries and stuff like that. So once you start to realize that this university is actually a business and they're so good at business and brand that the best day of someone's life is the day they're allowed to spend $200,000 at a college like Harvard. Right? Imagine you like celebrating for months when you're allowed to buy a car or something, right? That would be just really ridiculous. But somehow people perceive a university as like being allowed to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars as like one of the greatest achievements of your entire life. And I think it's a testament to how good at marketing and sales these universities are. When the ROI is clearly not there. I think at this point, especially when you look at random degrees, I would say, like, let's say someone's studying psychology and spending 6 figures to actually get that degree. The ROI, from my perspective, is definitely significantly less than if you spend that amount of money on other alternative education space and training programs and to actually get real experience. So I want to come back to the question here. You mentioned how you feel like undergrad is still useful. For me at this point, I'm not 100% sure, because I think unless your life's mission and goal is to become a doctor or specifically a lawyer or specifically an engineer, then sure. But even then, I would question that, because when you're 18 years old, how do you know anything? When I was 18, I literally did not know anything except for what my parents told me, which is I thought there were 3 or 4 career paths. There's doctor, lawyer, engineer, maybe politician. Like there was just a handful of career paths. And now I know significantly more about the world, and that most people get a job that's actually not that directly related to their degree. So I often tell people that I would actually not advise my kids to go to university.
Wow,
I would
really?
not. Yeah, let's debate this. I would not send my kids to school. Like if they genuinely want to, if they're like, okay, since I was 10 years old, I want to be a doctor. Okay, maybe. But if someone's like, I don't know what I want to do, I would not. Why would I tell them spend 50, 100K, 150K on a degree when you actually don't know what you want to do? And for me personally, like, sure, I study computer science. Sure, my business and brand is on that, but my day-to-day has nothing to do with computer science. My day-to-day is 100% entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, and business. So that actual knowledge and that degree did not actually get me anything that I'm doing right now.
I see your point. But what I feel like would be better is if your future kid finds some kind of passion and already works toward that before college. Because if they still don't know what they're interested in by 18, I feel like they didn't spend enough time exploring, because you have that flexibility and freedom to do that, especially in your teenager years. What I would say is go to Harvard or Stanford or any top 10 school, or any school, honestly. And you can say, I'm a Stanford dropout. At least, like, right now, at least, there is still some value to having some kind of college name where, like, it's just something that people recognize, right? Like, in case you do want to get a corporate job, in case you do want to, you know, get some funding for a startup, right? It's a very easy, high level, 1 second view of credibility that I think, if I were to advise people to not be too risky and to not, you know, take the path that like where you don't know where it's going to go, to still have a balance of risk averse and taking risks, you know.
Yeah, I see what you mean, which is these are like public signals where within 2 seconds, if you see Harvard dropout or Harvard alum or Forbes 30 under 30, these like random metrics or labels actually do create like a judgment of someone individually. But if you actually take a step back and understand, why do most people want to go to these schools? If you put aside, like, setting aside, you know, the prestige and the feeling that you made it in life, and just talk about the pure ROI, a lot of people who end up going to one of these schools, they, like, based on your experience, someone who graduates from like Stanford or Harvard, obviously they end up getting like really good corporate jobs, but these corporate jobs aren't paying them millions of dollars out of college. It's like 150K, which is a good salary to earn out of school. But at least from my perspective, and maybe I'm biased because I have a business, but I just feel like that is so much easier to make in a business than it is in a degree. And again, I'm biased, so like, fight me on this. But I feel like, imagine if I was 18 years old and I spent like 100 to 200K. My parents just gave me that in cash that I could deploy in any kind of training programs online. And I have 4 years of time to grind on a business. I could easily make more than 100K, 200K within 4 years of just grinding. So that's why I'm like, okay, would I really like deploy that to just sit in random classes, the professors who are there for research and not to actually teach, to at the end of the day get like, you know, a job that pays 10K a month? Or I could deploy that and earn way more and actually own equity and control my time and schedule.
When you say it like that, the answer is obvious. But the bottom line is, it depends on the person. So you as a person are extremely self-driven. I'd say that myself as well, hence why we're self-employed. We're not just sitting around, you know, dancing or like playing sports or like doing things that actually don't give us a living. So I think for anyone listening, it's really about like what you're actually able to do. Because the reason I think kids should go to school is because they just simply don't have enough willpower to discover, like, I need to create value in the world. Like, even when people go to school now, they're just like, oh, I have to go to school because I have to go to school. But if they did not have that structure in place, they'd be wasting their time all day and never contributing to society. And so that's why I think like structure is definitely needed for some people.
Interesting. So do you feel like if most people don't go to a college, they just be like sitting there scrolling online all day long, not actually grinding towards building something?
I think most people,
Really?
Yeah, most people, like, you give them a summer break and they're not doing anything with their summer break, right? But for me, I'm just like, oh, I'm excited about summer break because that's when I have the freedom to work on something I'm really passionate about. That's why I did the summer before senior year, or sorry, summer before Caltech. I started my very first YouTube channel and I was grinding on it in the summer because I was passionate about it. And I also enjoyed seeing results from my own efforts. That's also why I felt, I think, kind of depressed in my first corporate job immediately, like within the first 2 weeks, because I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, I knew that no matter how hard I worked, it's not guaranteed to show up in bonuses or promotions or all of that stuff. And to this day, I see people at my old company, like they should have been promoted, but they didn't because of the job market. Our friend is literally suffering in corporate and should have gotten a promotion 2 years ago, but she hasn't. And so I just don't believe in institutions anymore handling your destiny. Like you should be in charge of your own destiny.
I agree with that. Imagine people actually think that business and entrepreneurship is significantly more risky than having a corporate job. But the example you provided where our friend is essentially like toiling away, she's like they're working very, very hard. It's not like they're slacking or anything. And, 1 or 2 years should have been promoted, but wasn't, right? So their entire like destiny is in the hands of this like corporate institution that, on a whim could be like, actually, never mind. Whereas if all of that time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears are put 100% into something they own equity in, then you really control that destiny. Like, for example, I cannot be fired. Like, even though there are market changes that could affect my business, even though there are external factors that are out of my control, no one no one person can just decide you're done, right? I originally came into this concept from this book. Have you read Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb or heard of it?
No, but I've heard the K-pop song.
Let's go. So in that book, he gave an example about how most people think corporate jobs are very stable and risk-free. But if you compare like a corporate job to a taxi driver, sure, like the person who does a corporate job actually earns more. But if you talk stability, right? The risk is distributed among someone who's self-employed, like a taxi driver, right? They could have one bad client, but they're not actually going to like they cannot be fired by someone. Sure, like maybe their like license could be revoked if they do something heinously wrong. But the thing about working corporate is that you could just you're like a number on a page, right? You could be like, someone could snap your fingers and fire you in 2 seconds, and then you're screwed. And then you're like 3 to 6 months searching for a job because you're dependent on someone else. Whereas if you own your own business, you own all the risk. And I just know that like, at this point, there's no way that I could be like 100% taken out of business. Like I would spin something else up, I would move back home, I would keep grinding. And also the upside is unlimited, right? I think Jeff Bezos talked about originally like brought this idea to the forefront that in baseball, the max score you can get is like a home run. But in entrepreneurship, there is no upside, there's no cap. You could literally be billions of dollars, trillions of dollars at this point, right? So I don't know. For me, in my mind, I still don't know why so many people have this brainwashing narrative that like entrepreneurship is way too risky. I need to like put my head down and be like at a stable 9 to 5. That's the only way forward. When I still talk to people who are kind of in that stable, like quote unquote stable 9 to 5 career, a lot of them are like, oh yeah, like this is actually my passion is something else. I would love to like do a side hustle or do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, just do it then. They're like, oh, but it's risky. What if I fail? What if this happens? Why do you think most people are trapped in their stable 9 to 5 job?
The sunk cost fallacy is a big part of it. That's also why I did not want to leave consulting. I felt like I had already invested so much time and energy into, first of all, getting a degree that would make me competitive for this job. And then I case prepped so much. I got this job that people think are prestigious, right? And I think people's perception of you is something that really influences your decisions as well. And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to get past that and just, again, like I said, have a really strong sense of self-belief and self-identity and what you want in life. You have to have that even more as an entrepreneur. And he brought up the job, right? And so something I always go back to is investment banking. So investment banking, people have died from internships because of overwork. Like 21-year-olds, 23-year-olds died from their jobs. And to me, it's just like, you hear that on the news all the time in an article. It's like not a new thing, right? And so I hope this kind of answers your question about like, why do you think people will not leave their corporate? It's like, this has become the norm. It's like, oh, of course they would work 90-hour weeks because that's what you need to do to climb the corporate ladder and build a stable life. But I'm like, first of all, health is way more important because what are you even working hard for? Second of all, I think the same thing, if you convert all those hours to build your own business, like you could literally be a billionaire by now. Like if not billionaire, but millionaire, sorry, the M's and fees. Given you're not like actually like a normal level of intelligence, right? And so it really comes down to, like I said, about the kind of person you are and the identity and personality. So the reason why I was so unhappy in consulting was I felt like the time used was not something that I could do uniquely. Like I just realized like time working for money is actually kind of wasting time for me. But I feel like it takes a very special type of person, which is why when I read Millionaire Fastlane, it was that very first light bulb moment that gave me hope, that made me not so sad about my job anymore, because I realized I could really commit to something like YouTube and see how far it takes. And so for anyone listening to this, if this conversation resonates, then they could probably be set up for the foundation to be an entrepreneur. But if someone listens to this and they're like, oh, what the heck is Aman and Amy talking about? They're probably very suitable for a corporate 9-to-5 job, right? So it all takes that kind of like resonance in terms of like what you consume and then how you feel about it.
I knew a guy, let's call him Josh. His whole life is centered around investment banking. He's in college right now. He's looking, I mean, he probably has done 1 or 2 investment banking internships. His whole perspective is my number one dream in life is to like be a Goldman Sachs kind of like guy on Wall Street, investment banker who's working 80 hours a week. And I was trying to have like a serious conversation with him a couple years back to try to really tease apart why is his dream in life to be working 70, 80 hours a week at a company like that. And when you actually look at the details here, these like entry-level investment bankers don't actually get paid that much. They get like 120K, which is, okay, fine. Like it's a 6-figure job, but you're also in New York City, okay? That's like $60,000 a year in any other state in the entire country, honestly, because the cost of living here or New York is so high, right? That's one thing. The second thing is that you're working double what a normal person works, right? So your hourly rate is even lower. And the stress, like a lot of people who are in really stressful corporate jobs like that, they have to spend a lot of money to cope in other areas. So a lot of them end up picking up drugs or drinking, or they spend way too much on like expensive dinners to like try to keep that face and image, just essentially like cope. So they spend more because their life is so stressful and difficult just to even exist. And the payoff at the end of the day, first of all, it's not even guaranteed. So a lot of these like entry-level investment banker people think they're going to be the partner at the firm in 10 years. That's like 1 in 100 of them, right? So it's already hard enough to get one of these entry-level jobs at these companies. You already have to be like top 5%, top 10% of your entire finance part of your university, right? Not only that, but then you have to be like 1 out of 100 of all these entry-level people who ends up becoming like quote unquote a millionaire, and you know, high up in these firms. So you are literally battling every step of the way. And the light at the end of the tunnel is, sure, you make a few $1 million of income in your 30s and 40s, but also, what if you just sunk 80 hours a week into your own business? You could get there significantly faster. You get to decide your own schedule, your own routine. You decide what you want to take on and what you don't. Often it's something you're more passionate about, right? Because a lot of these people who are doing these crazy finance jobs, they might brainwash themselves into thinking they're actually passionate about it. But if you actually sit down and talk to them face to face and ask how much do you enjoy like walking up to the office and doing what you're doing, most of them would be like, like 50-50 at best. Right. Whereas when you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of them do genuinely feel like they're having an impact. They almost feel excited. Not everyone, but a lot of them feel excited to actually make moves, to keep learning about the business. I know both me and you, we consume like educational, informational content about business, entrepreneurship, and our brands in our free time too. So like I'm in the shower, I'm like working out, I'm like listening, consuming information about that. Most people who work a 9-to-5 job, when they're outside of those hours, they hate their job so much it's like traumatic to even bring it up on the weekend, right? Like if I ask how was work on the weekend, most 9-to-5 people will be like, dude, let's please not talk about work. It's like so traumatic. I don't even want to bring it up. Whereas entrepreneurs, like us and our friends, we enjoy talking about it in our free time. Like we have such good, fun conversations because it's so purposeful and meaningful, and we genuinely enjoy it. So for all of those reasons, I'm just shocked that we're still at this point where so many people are brainwashed into thinking, 1, a 9-to-5 job is risk averse. 2, your quality of life is significantly better in a quote unquote stable 9-to-5 job. I think it's just, I don't know. I'm extremely against corporate jobs at this point.
I can tell.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For a while in the beginning of the year, actually, I was considering going back to corporate because I was just so stressed about everything hanging on to me. And so I think that there are definitely pros and cons, right? Because there's some comfort in being told what to do. So I think like, again, if you're suitable for that kind of position, or like perhaps you want to have more freedom outside of work and not think about work all the time, then a corporate would be nice, because I was definitely in that struggle earlier with like mental health and things not working well. But then I realized that I haven't actually done everything I could to make my business better. And so it's only that glimmer of hope and getting passion again that now I'm like, oh, heck no, I would never go back to corporate, you know? So one word you brought up is passion. That is the core of being a successful entrepreneur. The reason I say people would probably waste their time if they didn't go to college is because not enough people have a passion. Not enough people have even tried to explore their passion. And part of that is due to consuming a lot of mindless things that don't allow people to actually realize what they want to do with their lives. But I do want to also mention that, going back to the college point a little bit, I am privileged that my parents did pay for my degree. They've been saving up for years and years. We pinched every penny, super frugal, things like that. And so that's why I can say, oh, college was worth it, because I didn't have student debt, right? But I do think that, like you said, if you could take all that student debt and instead of put it in your business, like that's an insane amount of capital to work with, right?
Real quick, guys, if you want to stay up to date with me and get weekly productivity advice, subscribe to Thoughtful Thursday, my very own email newsletter. That's where I share in real time all the techniques, lessons, and frameworks that I picked up that week. The newsletter subscribers always hear it first. You can subscribe at amanmanazir.com/newsletter.
It's crazy. There are people who are getting their social security checks docked to pay off their student debt. Imagine someone takes out a student loan, goes 40, 50 years, and they still can't pay that loan back. I mean, I was like you. I was, I guess, privileged enough where my parents were able to cover my tuition. But a lot of people aren't like that. And that's a different discussion entirely. It's like taking out a loan and then you're getting your like social security checks docked when you're in your 70s, when you're supposed to be retired. You're still not even getting that. Plus, student debt is the only kind of debt that cannot be solved by bankruptcy. So like any kind of other debt, let's say like, I take out a car loan, my house, something terrible happens. I have all these debts, I cannot pay it. In theory, you can declare bankruptcy. Sure, your life will get messed up for a few years, but you move back to zero, okay? All the people who you owe money to, the government's like, you know what, there's no way this guy can pay it. It's fine. Wipe the slate clean. Get started in like 5 to 10 years. Okay, fine. Still not good, but like there's always that option. Student debt is the only thing that cannot be wiped out by that. So if you take that student debt, you are literally stuck in that until the day you die.
Yeah, people say they take it to their grave.
Literally, people die with student debt, which is insane, and not an insignificant number of people. There's a lot of people who are in their grave with their student debt. I hope it doesn't get passed on to family members. I don't think that's how it works. But yeah, I just think it's insane how like psyop people are out there to thinking that like this is the safe, realistic, best option to just like take out this loan. But on your point, you mentioned how you don't think that a lot of people, if they were just 18 in the world, would be able to construct their own destiny without like something like an institution like university. So my perspective on this is that I know you recently watched The Matrix. I haven't actually seen The Matrix, but I know the analogy, right? So there's the blue pill and there's the red pill, right? And if you take the blue pill, you go throughout life not seeing the Matrix. Like you live your life without really knowing what goes below the surface. Whereas the red pill, your life might be worse, but at least you know the truth. So for me, I'm always drawn towards the red pill. Like I would like my life to be worse, but I want it to be in my own hands. And also I want to know what's behind the curtain. So what do you think? Would you take the blue pill or the red pill in this analogy? Like, I guess the blue pill is corporate. The red pill is like going out on your own.
I forgot which pill is which, because recently I saw this term on social media that's like, you're just a red pill influencer. And so I took that as they're an influencer that keeps people in the matrix. So, well, either way, I would take the one that gets me out of the matrix. Yeah. And I think that's what reading books and content from people I've never heard about did for me. Otherwise, I would still be sad and just on this corporate ladder living on autopilot, which I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life, which is, it's interesting because, in my content and brand, I'm like, oh, 4.0, valedictorian, Caltech, blah, blah, blah. I am someone who did all that, and yet I broke away because I realized that I don't want to live like that. And the path that I feel like I'm happier with, that I can actually see value in my day-to-day activities, is working for myself. The norm is an incredibly brainwashing thing. We were using that term so many times, but it's exactly like staying in the matrix, because people hear about student debt and it's just so normal, and they're going to take it to their grave, but they just don't realize that there's another option.
Do you think entrepreneurship is born or taught? Do you think people are born entrepreneurs or can it be taught?
I feel like it's actually born with. Yeah. Because the way I approached school was actually like an entrepreneur. I wanted to take shortcuts and do things in the fastest, smartest way. And I would like to use my soft skills. I wanted to problem solve. I wanted to network and get all the knowledge and wisdom, more importantly, from everyone else around me to get to the most optimal place where I thought it was in life. Yeah.
I guess you always felt that like entrepreneurial drive and spirit was in you from like basically as long as you can remember.
Yeah, there was that podcast episode with Ali Abdal that you recommended, actually, and Daniel Priestley. He mentions how you should look back at your childhood to see any little glimpses of things you enjoyed purely and how that manifests as you're older. When I was younger, I would come up with entire like towns and worlds, and I would make cardboard boxes with like little store names, and then I would come up with my own fashion designs, write stories. I was very creative as a kid. I would like make buildings out of Legos as well. And most of all, I would also pretend to sell them. And I would also pretend to own a restaurant that I have my parents come in and I feed them like Play-Doh food. So I think that's something that you can look back at as a child and be like, oh, that's what really gave me a spark as a kid. But that spark gets dampened as you grow older and you're like, oh, but the reality of the world is like, I have to go to college and I have to do this, right? So you kind of forget about that. And then only once you return to your inner being and what sparked joy as a child, you're like, oh, actually, I was this person all along. It was just dampened by, society or like the reality of having to pay bills and XYZ, right?
Do you think most people have that spark and it's just put of like a stamping out by society and the parents and the older generation and expectations? Or do you feel like it's rare to know someone who has that spark in them from a young age?
I feel like everyone wants to be in control of their own lives, but it's like a luck of the draw also of where you're born and what circumstances you're born in. I don't want to say that anyone can be an entrepreneur, because if you're born in a third world country where like you literally have to do blue collar work to let your family survive, like you're not going to be able to find extra time to learn skills and build an online business, right? So I think that, I don't want to like say most everyone, but I think people do want to be the best versions of themselves. And it does come from both nature and nurture to determine if someone is in that position to then, it's very meta, to then nurture that entrepreneurial spirit inside of them.
I agree that if you're looking at someone who doesn't even have internet access in sub-Saharan Africa, I mean, let's put them aside.
Okay, you're right. I shouldn't nuance everything.
Yeah, those people, of course, like, I don't even think that's part of the discussion here. I'm not saying that every single person who's like in poverty in the globe can be an entrepreneur. I guess who I'm targeting here with this new channel and this podcast and all the content are those people who are 9 to 5, they have a stable job, they're able to pay the bills, but they want to take the next step and they want to take the leap and unlock the freedom of like running an internet business online, right? And I've actually looked at, I'm not comparing my situation to, someone who doesn't even have internet access in a third world country. I'm mainly looking at those people who grew up in a country like the United States, who had a stable family, who was often their parents even paid for school, like a lot of those benefits that most people don't have. And yet they still feel like they cannot make a business. Like they're like, no, I cannot take the risk. I cannot quit my job. I cannot work on things on the side. I have to just stay in like the tried and true path. So my perspective on this is I think a lot of it is expectations from parents. I think most parents are not business owners. The vast majority of parents do not understand like the way that the economy is nowadays. And even if they are a business owner, they're often like an old-timey business owner where they don't understand internet businesses. They don't understand social media. Like I don't know a single person in my like parents' generation or family, friends or anything who understands entrepreneurship and also understands the new social media landscape. Like, do you know anybody from like your childhood or your past who was like over the age of 50 who was like, yeah, like here's YouTube, Instagram, here's how you make lead magnets, here's how you close people, here's a sales funnel. Like, I don't think any of them understand it. So the advice is coming from stuff that worked in the 1970s and 80s, but we're in 2025 nowadays.
That's why I didn't tell my parents for the longest time I'm running my own business. It's because they just grew up knowing that they have to do everything themselves to make a living. And running a business means you inherently want to hire people to do things for you. And that's one of the big unlocks I had recently as well. But just to make sure I answer your question, it's like when I meet teenagers who are entrepreneurs, almost every time I ask them what their parents do, they're also entrepreneurs. And so, it's a combination of that nature versus nurture, right? But I would say that if that kid did not have any entrepreneurial spirit, then no matter how much of a business owner the parents are, they're still not going to be able to do that, right? Going back to the big unlock, I think having been good at math and then doing engineering and then having pride and being able to learn and problem solve things myself, I almost felt guilty to outsource things because I felt like I have to be able to do everything myself. Otherwise, I'm like, dumb or incapable. But you actually taught me that it's more valuable to spend your time on the higher level things that only you can do. And that when you're outsourcing, you're giving people who want a job actually. That's like what capitalism is. But they're also going to do a lot better than you. And so you will have way more outsized returns. So anyone who has a 9 to 5, I would say as soon as possible, outsource everything you can that is in the direction of you building your outside business, of your side hustle. Like just literally use your 9 to 5 to pay for your side hustle. That's like the hack that you could do now. And like you can do everything with AI, with the internet. You can outsource to people in the Philippines, in India. And like, again, this is great because you're actually giving those people a job and you're paying them with money that they want and need. So like what could be better than starting your own business while you have a 9 to 5?
Yeah, I want to dive into this in more detail because I think since we're talking about childhood, from when I was a young age, I would always look for the shortcut. And I was always someone who, if I could find like a way to save time, to deploy capital, to like make a goal happen faster, I would always do that. But my parents would tend to crack down on that. Like, I remember one day when I was probably like 12 or 13 years old, I like paid $3 on Amazon to get some like trading cards like one day earlier. And obviously that's not for a business or anything. That was just because I wanted it faster. But I got in so much trouble with my parents. They were like, you're not allowed to get anything anymore. Like, you just don't have freedom to like order anything you want. Like, you're done. Because I spent a few dollars to get something a bit faster. So that was almost the vibe, which is like, we do not spend money. Like, we do not spend money on anything like speed, anything you can do yourself. We do not spend money on that. And I would always kind of like be fighting against that in my mind. Like, because my natural disposition was, okay, why don't I just spend money to save time on this? Why don't I just kind of like try to get out of things that I think are useless? Like, when I was a kid, this is why like I struggled a bit in school. Not like actually meaning like I was still like an Asian kid. I was able to like get decent grades, obviously, and do well in standardized tests. But I would always struggle to do things that I thought were pointless, right? Like, for example, there's like a busy work assignment. Like, I would sit there for hours and I just like could not make myself do it, which is crazy. And now I think it makes sense because like with this entrepreneurial drive, if you're doing something that's quote unquote useless, you shouldn't be doing it. You should either pay someone to do it for you or find something else to do. But that's so contrary to school. In school, it's all about just like staying into the formula. Your teacher gives you this. If your teacher says memorize these 1,000 lines and say it over and over and over again, you better do that. Right. And the people who thrive in school all of the time, I actually want to get your opinion on this because you are someone who thrived in school, but you're also an entrepreneur. Usually they're able to like be very, they can essentially like make themselves do something that they like don't care about or they see as pointless. And they can honestly like stay on track with these things. Whereas for me, like I remember last minute for every single exam I was studying, like I would procrastinate literally everything I did. And I feel like now those like skills actually helped me in the world of entrepreneurship. So did you feel like, because you are an entrepreneur, but you also did well in school, like how do you basically square those two things together? Did you feel like you had that drive from an early age?
You had more drive than I did. I think I was, in Chinese terms, like 老师, which means like, you do what your parents tell you to do and you do it happily. Like you're a very good kid. And I was a very good kid. Like my parents would always say that. Like in fact, at my Chinese wedding, they were telling Sean like, something you got to know about Amy. She's just a really good kid. you know, like, so my dad would emphasize so much, like so much so that like your heart like breaks, like how much of a good kid they are. So just to give you an idea, right? And so I am someone who's very good at having grit and doing what needs to be done. That helped with school. And I think that mindset is not like, oh, I was forcing myself to do it, but I was also happy to do it because I knew that, you know, this would be good for my parents or my family or my future, right? And so if something is good for me, I will do it and I will do it happily because I think it's benefiting me. And that's a lot of the advice I give to my students or my audience as well. But with entrepreneurship, right, that's like a recipe for burnout. And that's something that I'm literally having to unlearn for all these years. And so I think it's like I did have a foundation to be an entrepreneur, but I'm also someone who wants to do right by my parents or like whatever they think. And so I think what their beliefs are, they're literally ingrained in me as well. Growing up as an Asian immigrant kid, as you were too, we just didn't have the extra money to spend on things. We were saving it for college or like things that so it's not like we weren't willing to spend money on things that would help our future. It's we thought those were different things, if that makes sense, right? We thought that was college.
What's interesting is I feel like I was not a good kid in the Asian mindset. It's so different, or it's so interesting. I was laughing because you were telling that story about how your dad is like, oh, Amy's such a good kid. Like, and the definition of being a good kid in kind of like the Asian mindset is they listen to pretty much everything your parents say. And like you said, not only do they listen, they do it with a smile on their face. It's kind of just like replicating everything your parents think. And I feel like ever since I was a kid, I like completely not disregarded, but like I was completely against most of what my parents said. So like if they told me something and I thought it was stupid, like I would do literally everything in my power to not do that. And only recently I've started to like trust my own judgment over my parents. Where like in the past few years, I'm like vocal with them now. If they tell me to do something, I will either just say okay and like do what I want, or or I will literally be like, I disagree with you for this reason, and I'm planning on doing this. And they've learned to accept it because they're like, this kid does whatever he wants, you know. But at this point, I think they're fine with it because I like have something to show for it. Where it's like I can show like by making my own decisions, by doing all this stuff, there's been like really good successful outcomes out of it. But I remember for the longest time when I didn't have that like trump card to show, which is like how much like the business I built, it was like super hard because I had this intuition that what I was doing was the right thing, but I had no proof to show my parents. I actually remember back when I didn't have any of my own money, I was like 18 or 19 years old. I wanted to spend on productivity apps so I could save time in school and on my YouTube channel. And I just started watching Ali Abdaal. So I wanted to get like Notion or a to-do list app or something like that, or like YouTube Premium, so I wouldn't have to sit there watching ads, you know? And I actually made a PowerPoint presentation to prove to my dad why I should be allowed to spend $50 to $100 a month on productivity apps. And he was like really, at that time, now it's different, but at the time he was really against it. He was like, how could you like throw away money on these like apps? You can just do everything yourself. And only when my mom was like, it's fine. Like, we have the money. Like, why are you not letting him spend $50 to $100 a month on productivity and tools that he believes in? You know, so I guess the one thing that they did do was they allowed me to buy any book. So I was like buying pretty much any book I wanted from a young age. But yeah, I was definitely not a quote unquote good kid, but I feel like now it's definitely paid off in the long run.
A special kid. And now because you're successful, which is what Asian parents want at the end of the day, you are a good kid.
Now I feel like the trump card is like, you can see like where all of it went and where it ended up. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like perfectly happy with how this turned out. And a lot of it was like going against what they thought was a good idea at the time.
Yeah, this is actually very helpful, I think, to people listening if, like you said, the thing holding them back is the expectations in parents. So how I kind of changed my parents' mind over time was extremely dragged out and strategic. So I was full-time for maybe like a year and a half before I told my parents. And what they thought I was doing, because I know people are going to ask, is I was working at a startup, which technically I was. But I would tell them on each call, like, hey, I got this deal with this brand that they knew. And they're like, oh, great. And I was like, oh, and I got this much money. Because, you know, you got to show them the money. I went to this event and I saw this person. And oh, over the summer last year, I brought my mom to a movie premiere. And she literally saw Emma Robertson with her eyes. And like she saw me walk the red carpet. And so she's like, wow, this is fun. This is cool. This is a new world. My dad also was then able to get a taste of what this alternate universe was essentially, because all they knew was engineering. You know, how could they know the other side of the world, right? And so after seeing that, he actually told me like, wow, Amy, like, I think this is great what you're doing, and you're doing things different from us because you're actually finding different opportunities and your whole worldview is expanded. These opportunities are so different from what we had. So I built them up little by little, literally across 1.5 years. And then finally I was like, hey guys, the startup's not doing well. And but the good thing is that my business is doing well and I'm making way more than I did at the startup. And they're like, oh, great. And so that also shows them, hey, this business thing isn't actually that risky because I am in control, right? So it's all a shift of perspective, and you got to show them the results. With Asian parents, like if you tell them in the beginning when you're like making $2 a day, it's like, okay, I'll get a corporate job.
I feel like you took like the light path and I took the dark path, where I literally just told them, I was like, I'm not doing this, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing whatever I want. And they would just get mad at me or argue with me back in the day. They were supportive when I left my 9-to-5 job. I think that was, I wonder why they were supportive. I think it was because of Ali Abdal, because they saw how rich he was and how much he was making. They were like, okay, we could excuse this away by, number one, they saw how hard I was working. So they saw that I spent 3 or 4 years grinding on my channel as like my number one priority. So they saw like how hard I was working on the side. So they had faith. This guy's like not going to slack off and do nothing. The second thing was I was so young. So I only left like 10, 11 months after I graduated undergrad. So I was 22 or something. I think I was 22 at the time. So I was young enough where my parents could like mentally think of it as almost like a master's, right? Instead of like going to business school or doing like a master's, he's spending a year trying to like make this business work. And our agreement with me and my dad was he would like give me the bare minimum to support me on like rent and like food. That's it. Like the rest of me he didn't do anything for my business investments. I think a lot of people think that like everyone in business is successful because their parents gave them money. My parents actually gave me essentially $0 for my business. Like I did everything bootstrap myself. I guess the only thing they gave me was like, they gave me my very first camera for my birthday when I was like 18. But I guess that was like, again, like $500-$600, which most people who have a 9-to-5 job have more than $500-$600 available, right? So they essentially provided a safety net, which I'm grateful to them for. They were like, hey, we'll give you a safety net. Worst case, you can always move back home for the next year. But in March of 2025, you have to be independent. Like you have to be able to make your own income. Like at that point, you either get a job or you make your own income. So it gave me like a 12-month countdown and a safety net to pull it off. And I remember for the first few months, I was so embarrassed when someone asked, like, how's the business going? I remember we were at some wedding in Mexico and it was June of 2024. So it was 2 or 3 months after I went full time on my business. I was losing money every month. So like I was not making any money. I was using my savings, or I was making money, but I wasn't profitable at the time. So I remember telling people, oh, like I'm a YouTuber. And they're like, oh, like YouTubers are really rich. How much money do you make? And at the time I was like, somehow I need to skirt this question. So yeah, it took probably 6 months until I was like profitable, and my parents were kind of like supporting me throughout that process. But I do know that if I hadn't been able to make it work by March, they would have definitely been like, you need to go and get a corporate job. So I kind of just like did it before I showed signs of success, but it's interesting like the different routes we both take to get our parents on our side.
My philosophy is that it's a lot more peaceful if you just make everyone happy, keep them happy, than just show them the results. One artist that I've been obsessed with listening to, especially while working out, is Connor Price. And there's a song that's called Receipts. And in the chorus, he goes, I don't want to show people what I do. I would rather show them what I achieved. And I don't want to say what I've achieved. I would rather show them the receipts, you know, or like, just don't tell people your goals, what you're working on, and then just show them later. It's just peaceful and better for you. And it's interesting that, like, you know, having been a good kid and taking the light path in contrast to you, I was still susceptible to going down to the dark paths. I'm actually pretty easily influenced because I come with the perspective that I don't know what the best thing in the world is. But if I hear that this is the best thing and I see proof, I'm going to go for it. Right. And so I just saw the proof of like entrepreneurship in that. And I also had a an interest in actually doing that. And so I think that what's most important is to keep an open mind, to never write off something, because when you're young, especially in your 20s, and you consider posting on social media, or you've considered making a side hustle, to me, it's just so mind-boggling to not try it. Like, literally, what are all the reasons that you can say that you would not try it? And I could probably give you like 5 more responses to each of those being like why you should do it, right? You literally have no risk, you have no family, you have no ceiling for the returns. But what's the worst that could happen? Like, literally, what is the worst that could happen if you try to do a side hustle? Not even quit your job, but just do a side hustle, right?
I completely agree. Actually, on this note, I think we take a different stance on like the receipts versus the telling people. Because I get people, my parents get, my family gets really pissed off at me because I'm kind of that like, not egotistical, but I'm the kind of person who'll be like, I'm going to do this by this age. I haven't actually done anything so far, but I'll just tell them. Like, I remember when I was 18, I straight up told my parents, I'm going to be a professional YouTuber and I'm going to make a full-time income and I'm gonna be a YouTuber. And this is like when I first started too, like before I made any money. And they were like, this is delusional. Like, why are you saying this? Like, you're almost being like manic. This is like, you know, thoughts of grandiosity. How can you possibly say that? Like, no one's able to do that. It's like so unlikely, you know, for every like successful YouTuber, there's 1,000 failures. But I would just sit there and be like, no, it's gonna happen. Like, there's almost like this delusional self-belief. And I feel like that has just fueled me like throughout my whole life. I just have this like delusional self-belief where I just say it. And I feel like I almost look like an asshole too sometimes when it's like, no, I'm going to do this. Like, it's going to happen. It's almost happened, you know? And I think certain people like feed off of that like dark energy, which I feel like I do, which is like, I just tell someone, like, I feel like I say I'm going to do this. And then I find it akin to, I know Kanye West is like not fashionable in the media these days, but if you look at him 25 years ago or 20 years ago when he was up and coming, he would do the exact same thing. So he would just tell everyone like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to be a #1. I'm going to win a Grammy. I'm going to be a #1 rapper. I'm going to be a #1 artist. And no one like believed it until it actually happened. You know, so I feel like I fall into that camp where I tend to just like have this delusional self-belief that fueled by like this dark energy that just pushes me to like grind hard because I said it, so I better make it happen right now.
You have to believe it. I mean, what you said is like manifestation, right? So I wouldn't tell my parents, but I would have to believe it myself. Because why would you know, try so hard on something if you didn't have some form of belief that it would pay off, right? So when I was working in my consulting job, I actually would chat a lot with this other analyst who also came from Caltech. And we were both really allured by social media, just like, oh, why can't it be us? But one time I said like something along the lines of, oh, I also think I can become this YouTuber. I said it in a very loose way too, not like, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber. But she was like, oh, but it's like really hard, isn't it? Like, it's survival bias. Everyone that succeeds is like super lucky and blah, blah, right? And so she was very, very discouraging. But I think that moment on, I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell you anything anymore because you're just going to discourage me, but I'm just going to do it. And so I think it's, you know, a different flavor of what you said, right? Where it's like, you kind of get a taste of what it is to be rejected, but then you're like, who cares what they think or say? I believe what I believe and I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it my reality because I believe it's my reality.
I actually knew someone when I first started my channel a few months in. He was one of my brother's best friends. And he actually told my brother that he found out on my channel. And he says, why is Aman doing YouTube? YouTube is already saturated. He's never going to pass 10,000 subscribers. There's no way. He should just quit right now. He straight up said that. He told my brother, tell Aman to quit. He'll never pass 10,000 subscribers. It's impossible. YouTube's already saturated. PewDiePie's massive. It's 2019 or it's 2020. No one can build a brand these days. It's already done. It's just survivor bias. And I remember hearing that and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And now my brother actually asked him, why did you say that? And then he goes, oh, the Aman then couldn't have done it, but the Aman now, that makes sense.
What does that even mean?
He goes like, no, the Aman back then couldn't have done it, but now the Aman now is, yeah, he can do it, which makes no sense. So it's kind of interesting to see like the people who kind of like put you down, like they will never admit I was wrong. They will always just come up with some kind of justification or reason why they're correct.
You know, you said, why are people so unwilling to pursue their dreams? I think it's those kind of people that they will find every reason for someone else to not succeed. So of course they would discourage themselves, right? Like if they don't believe, if they think that YouTube is saturated, then of course, why would they try to do YouTube, right?
Oh, I completely agree with that. The kind of person who judges other people is paralyzed because of the perceived judgment of them, right? So if they think, oh, like, why is this person doing that? This person shouldn't do this. They should just stay in their lane. Of course, they're going to stay in their lane because they think everyone else is judging them. I actually remember in high school, there was one guy, the only guy in my high school who tried to build a brand in like 2017, 2018. He was posting on Instagram. He actually got a sponsorship from like a local clothing shop. And like at the time, he was like the most hated on person I'd ever met. Like everybody would shit on him. Every single person would be like, he's such a loser. Like, why is he posting? Probably I've heard hundreds of people. I don't think I heard a single person like hype him up, which is crazy now looking in retrospect. He was the only guy who actually put himself out there, yet every single person tried to take him down. I remember people will like get his Instagram deleted. Like they'd be like haters who would like be like reporting his Instagram. His Instagram got deleted. He made a new one. He kept on trying. So I just think it's insane like how powerful the haters are back in the day, which is why I'm doing this to take down the haters.
Okay, you're right. We'll come back down
Back to the haters.
I think we can actually find comfort in being hated on, because when you take that first step and everyone else hates you and you get canceled, you're like, what do I have to lose? Let me just do like whatever the heck I want to do. And that's actually what some creators are doing now. They actually got canceled recently and they feel so much freedom because they were always scared of getting canceled. But now it happened and they're like, oh, I'm still alive, right? And something interesting is I actually grew up, this is going to sound maybe like a little arrogant, but I grew up feeling like I'm special, that I'm meant to do something special. And so that's why I'm fine with standing out. And I think that is also something that makes me susceptible to building a brand and being different from other people, you know, and not going with a herd. And I feel like a lot of pride from like not being with the masses. I like being not average.
I think every successful individual is a little bit egotistical and just a little bit narcissistic. They have to be. Like me too. I also have this, again, this sounds bad, but I have this like perception that like, not that I'm like morally better than other people, but I feel like I'm like, again, I want to stick out from the rest of the crowd, you know? And there's a lot of people like the proverbial haters in my life. Even in college, like I knew a guy who would always try to like bring me down. Every time I would talk about YouTube, he would essentially say things to the effect of, you're not special because you have a YouTube channel. You're not special. He would, and he was my friend too. He would say shit like that, right? I actually asked him to come on my YouTube channel and he declined. And I was like a little bit hurt by that. I was like, hey, I want to show my friends. I want to have like a podcast. Why are you not doing that? And I said the line, most people would be like, oh yeah, like for sure, I'll come on your channel. Like I want to support you. I want to do what I can to help. And he got really pissed off at me. He was like, how dare you think that you're like better than anybody else because you have a YouTube channel? Like he didn't say it that directly, but he was like mad at me. Like we had a discussion. I like apologized. Like I didn't mean it like that. So like now in retrospect, I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, oh yeah, like he clearly is just anti my goals. You know, it's like it's insecurity coming out, which is why he said stuff like that. So yeah, I agree. I do think you kind of have to have like a little bit of a sense that you're special, that you deserve to stand out. I was telling you about this recently. I listened to Jimmy Fallon on Diary of a CEO, and obviously Jimmy Fallon is like one of the most famous names out there in the world, in you know with like the Tonight Show and in late night. And he had this delusional belief from 18 years old. In his senior spotlight, he was actually voted most likely to replace David Letterman on the Tonight Show when he was 18 years old in his high school in the yearbook. And he did it. That's literally what he did. He replaced him on the Tonight Show. And for every single year, I think his goal by 25 was to make it on SNL. And he was telling the host on the podcast that he was going to kill himself if he didn't make it by 25. And then the host of Stephen Bartlett was like, were you actually going to do that? And he's like, I don't know, but I just knew that I was going to do this. It was going to happen. I would have figured out a way. So I feel like everybody who makes it has some kind of like delusional grandiosity, egotistical, small level of narcissism, self-belief, that they think they're special, that they think they deserve success. So I feel like I've been fueled by that throughout my life.
Yeah, it's even more important to have a little bit of that when you're younger, because when you're younger, it's even easier to be swayed and influenced by your surroundings. And so going back to environment and expanding it to age, right? So if you look at, you know, a 70-year-old, they don't give an F about what people think. They'd be like, you know, in the locker room, like butt naked as an example, right? Just like, even if they're just cranky and they don't care if people judge them, right? And so like, if we know that that's like an unlock of wisdom, having lived like 70 years. Like, why don't we try to live like that now? And I believe that the way to happiness and true freedom is to get there as soon as possible. And so when you're younger, it's actually hard. Like for me, I was surrounded by people who, didn't truly try hard in school, or they were like caring about popularity, as many high schoolers are, right? And so fortunately, I had this little feeling that, hey, I'm different. And so I'm not going to care about popularity. And so I don't care about having like too many friends. I'm just going to have a few close friends who actually support my goals and are the right friends, not like your like hater friend, right? And so I think that self-love and how much you respect yourself carries into how you give away energy to other people. So when you protect your energy, it's just going to level you up more and more. So I, in high school, started with, a couple of good friends who were good influences. Then in college, having to Caltech, way more inspiring, smart, amazing people. Then going even into New York, right? Like, I love my friends and environment right now. And I feel like we can just do anything in the world, right? And so I think it's like you want to accelerate the path to not giving an F and having the best tribe as soon as possible.
I think it's so funny. I feel like we keep coming back to this like light side versus dark side. I still feel like you took the light side, where it's like you felt like you didn't have many friends or something, and you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on having like deep quality friendships. For me, it was like, I hate all these people in high school. They're so mean to me or whatever. I'm going to have so many good quality, successful, nice friends in my life that'll like drown out all of that noise. I also think literally, I'm like, it's all coming back to me. I remember in high school, people would like Photoshop my face in like photos and like weird, not weird photos, but it'd be like memes. They'd like make memes of Aman, like how he's like so lonely, he has no friends. Like he's in the back of it. Like they'd have a photo of everyone hanging out. They put Aman in the corner by himself. Like,
This is so sad.
yeah. Like, so this shit used to happen. And I feel like that like dark energy fuels me, where it's like, I'm literally going to destroy those people,
Okay, I did have that in elementary school, honestly. Okay, I'm not going to go into it, but basically some friends, like I thought they were close to me, but they ended up being friends with other people. And I'm going to be very honest here. I think one of the reasons was also because I was like the only Asian person. And so I constantly felt that throughout living in a very white town, that like people would treat other people better. I was uncool, blah, 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 right? And so I felt it more strongly of this like vengeance in elementary school. But then I think later on, it just came to be like, oh, I'm going to put myself first because I'm the only person who's going to do that. It's fueled more by positive energy rather than negative.
I haven't unlocked that yet. That's in my spiritual journey. Like in the next 5 to 10 years, I still feel like that dark energy still is there. But I actually wanted to circle back to what you mentioned earlier, which are like, what are the biggest 2 or 3 unlocks you've had in 2025 this year in the world of life, entrepreneurship, and self-development?
For sure. First of all is to escape the matrix by spending money on programs and my business rather than a college or my MBA degree. That was incredibly huge because now I get to stay in New York City and I just feel so much more hope and joy and optimism about the future. The second unlock is kind of an interesting one. It's aesthetics matter. So I still film with my iPhone and I've been doing pretty well. And I'm someone where, like, coming from an engineering background, I would hate to make presentations and make things look beautiful. But in the marketing world, you have to do that. And I think I would be very stubborn and not want to spend a lot of my time on that. But now I'm realizing that, hey, if I think that something's more aesthetic but less practical, but if the aesthetics gets my video more views and more trust, then it actually is practical. An example is we had a dark couch that you can see in my old podcast, and it's actually, pretty ugly now that I think about it, but it's really practical because you can't get it dirty, but it's not aesthetic. And so that bringing that aesthetic aspect in has not only made me happier and realize, oh, okay, this actually has value, but it's also, I think, going to help my business and expand in that way because, Instagram, everything's video, right? It's not just like written. So the third one is don't reinvent the wheel. I touched upon this earlier, but it's like having pride of doing everything myself. Fortunately, I've had somewhat of a good business sense. So I outsourced editing literally at the very start of my YouTube journey when I was going to take this seriously. I reached out to so many editors. I found a long-term editor, created a whole Notion system, streamlined workflow, right? But I did this for 2 years, still riddled with doubt. All of the decisions I made were riddled with doubt because I thought I was coming up with something new as a decision, because 99% of creators do everything themselves, right? But I learned this year from speaking with you and consuming more business content that there's so many people in this other pocket of the world that are already doing all these things. And if I had just listened, I could have done that earlier and done even better business things. I don't have to learn everything myself, right? So I have to get rid of that like pride sense of doing that. So those are the big 3 unlocks. And I'm really excited with 2025. So many changes. It's a special number, 45 squared, and so many other math things that are like too nerdy right now. But I feel like those 3 things are going to blow up my business. And I'll be happier doing it too, because in the beginning of this year, I truly felt the most burnt out I ever have. And I was so guilty at myself because I felt like I wasn't working that much. And I felt like, hey, why is it in school that I can do the things that I don't enjoy doing and brute force it? Like, why can I not have that discipline anymore? Have I really lost that part of myself? But it's because there was dissonance in what I can do to actually benefit myself, which was to hire more. So I have to really let go of that mindset my parents taught me for so many years, that I can't let go of money. I have to be willing to spend. That's the headline here. Spend money, save time.
Yeah, I think limiting beliefs will kill you in the world of business and anything in life. What I was thinking when you were talking about that is, the way I see it is, there is a goal. And it is prudent to use whatever tool, asset, or technique to achieve that goal. If you have a goal, let's just make up a goal. Let's say your goal is 5 million subscribers on YouTube. Arbitrary goal, right? Whatever you can do to get there is prudent. So for example, let's say one thing you need to work on is aesthetics, like for the sake of argument here. Even if you feel like, oh, like, why do I want to do that? I want to like focus more on the content. I don't want to like worry about that stuff. It's too much of a headache. I have to spend a bunch of money. It's kind of irritating. It's kind of annoying. It is worth like setting that limiting belief aside and just like blowing full steam ahead and almost like using that to get to their goal. I think another big one is selling online. A lot of people have a goal of becoming financially independent from their content. They want to run a business. They want to make millions of dollars, but they're afraid of selling. And that fear of selling actually kills them because they have a fear of selling. They won't be able to. Business is sales. Right? Like, there's no business out there that doesn't sell a product in exchange for money. That is what business is. And if someone has that like fear of selling, it will kill them. It really stops their progress. A lot of the time that fear comes from where you perceive other people to be like, quote unquote, scammy or selling, and then you turn that inward on yourself. So a lot of people I talk to who have that fear, a lot of the times they will see like other creators launch a product or other creators try to sell something. They will either think it's like cringy or scammy, or they'll see that creator's audience turn on them, and that will like double down on the fear that like, I can't sell something. So I have found that by like setting that fear aside and being like, no, I'm just going to sell something. I'm going to pitch my product in every single video. And if I come off as overly salesy, I'll delete the comments. I literally do not care. Like I do not care what my perception is or anything. Like, I'm a business person. I have a product. I believe my product changes lives. It has changed lives. And I believe it's worth every single penny. So I'll sell it as much as I can. I will scream it from the rooftops. And if anybody says it's cringy, nah, get lost. I don't care.
Love that. You actually read my mind, because that was one of the unlocks I forgot to mention when I was listing them. It was to sell. Actually, in our first podcast together, I was saying how I'm so scared of selling, right? But now that I've done it, through my email newsletter, and in every single video I'm promoting something of my own, it's like, why would I not promote something of my own? I literally have so many eyeballs on my video I spent hours and hours making. Why would I not use that as a top of funnel for leads, right? And so it's truly that limiting belief. Like you said, you're so much more eloquent than me. You like think of the terms that like, I'm like using all these like words to describe it when it just comes down to one word, and it's limiting beliefs. It's fear as well. And so, recently I've had trouble like filming, and I just feel like I can't speak well. And I realize it comes from a place of fear that like with more subscribers, I'm more worried about what I say. But I have to go back to how that first video, I didn't give an F about what people said. And I just came to speak with passion and do what I want to do. And that's what made my video successful. And so you can have more fun and more results if you do things not out of fear, but with hope, right? And so if people do have limiting beliefs, something I've learned this year for me is that like you can kind of feel when a limiting belief is holding you back, which is why I was feeling burnt out and this incredible internal conflict and dissonance. So you just really have to take that first step and force yourself to sell. And you do it enough times and it suddenly feels like a light switch, like on off. And it's like, oh, of course I would sell. Why would I not sell before? But you have to push yourself a little bit before that. Only in retrospect, it seems like a 1 second unlock, you know?
My thoughts on this are like most YouTubers sell someone else's product through a sponsorship. So that makes no sense to me. Like why are 99% of people completely fine with shilling someone else's product? Not that it's a bad product, but like someone else's product. But when it comes to launching your own product, your own course, your own merchandise, it immediately feels like it's this horrible thing. And in fact, what's more likely? You sell someone else's product and you later find out that it's not that good and they're doing something wrong, or you put your time and effort into making a good product and you sell it yourself and you know your product through and through. You know you're not harming people. You know what you're selling is valuable because one, you built it, so you know it through and through, and two, people are telling that to your face. Your customers are like, hey, I love your product. This is changing my life. This is so good. So yeah, honestly, anytime I meet a YouTuber, the first thought I have in my mind is, why are they not selling their own product? Usually from what I've seen, it's a bit of like a limiting belief, which is like, again, like you described, oh, I can't sell. It's too hard. No one will buy my product. I have nothing valuable to sell. But more and more, I actually work with, I have a friend, Tintin, as you know, he's Ali Abdal's ex-YouTube producer. He runs a program called the $100,000 YouTuber, where he helps YouTubers launch their first product and sell to their audience. And I do guest lectures for his community and I'm like giving feedback to their products and sales and stuff like that. And I've seen dozens of examples of YouTubers who are on sponsorships, make their own product, really work at it, sell their own product, earn more than the sponsorships, and they're so much more happy now that they own their product through and through, and they've like set aside that limiting belief. So I think if you're someone who creates content, you have a large following, or even if you aspire to that, sell as soon as possible. Build a product, ideate it, work on it, and sell it, because that will honestly change your life because you have control over that and it's truly yours.
For sure. In the very beginning, when I first had my video blow up, my previous executive coach, who used to work at McKinsey at my old consulting firm, she was like, oh my gosh, did you promote your newsletter? You should have done that. And I was like, oh no, but I don't want to like work on something else and divert my energy from YouTube. I want to create quality content, right? And so looking back, I'm like, why didn't I not promote my newsletter on that video already? But it just comes down to peer pressure and perception, public perception, because if everyone else is doing it, you're like, oh, okay, this is great. It's just like going to college and student debt. Like everything we're saying today is all intertwined. But then when other people do it and you do it, you feel like public perception won't be as angry at you because everyone else is doing it. So they don't have that many people to hate on, right? And so I think it just comes down to having more education about what business really is. And what's interesting is that now creators are all moving towards business. You can see it with like the ads for like Kajabi or whatever, you know, giving them free shout out. But like literally everything out there on social media for content creators is now like, oh, you got to be a business owner too. Don't just fall into the trap of creating, right? And so I kind of wish that I was a little more of a visionary in that regard.
Yeah, I completely agree. The way I think about it is, I guess the biggest lessons I'm taking away from this, and I mean, these are things I already believed, but one is everything good in life comes with some risk. So a lot of people are afraid of quote unquote losing money on an investment, right? Like for example, this is the first time we're showing this new studio space for a podcast, guest number one over here. And this studio cost thousands of dollars to put together, if not like over $10,000. And the vast majority of people I know would be like, that's such a waste of money. Like, why are you spending on that? Like, what the heck? Why don't you just do it yourself? Actually, that guy I was talking about earlier, we'll call him Josh, the investment banker guy. This is last year. I was telling him, oh, like I have a video editor. And he was like, why don't you just edit the videos yourself? And at that point I was like, I'm just not speaking to Josh anymore. I was like, what a stupid, ridiculous advice he's giving me. I was like, this guy's studying business in school and he's like, you should just edit your videos yourself.
Yeah.
What the hell?
People's
like,
background is like, they think they're right.
Yeah.
But
oh my God.
they
That
haven't
was
done
like,
it.
I just listened to that. I was like, I'm just done. Like, I'm done speaking to this person about anything like this because their advice is just so horrible. You know, So everything good comes with some kind of risk. I think another thing I was thinking about here that I'm starting to realize is most people are living a life that they don't want because they'd rather live in alignment with other people's values. They'd rather not ruffle any feathers. They'd rather not get hate. So they're choosing to live a life they don't like, as opposed to being public enemy number one. Everyone hates you. Your friends and family will make fun of you. People will put you down. People on the internet will hate on you. Yet you live the life of your dreams. And I feel like I would rather be public enemy number one, the most hated person online, the most hated person in the world, if it means I can live true to myself and to my own dreams, rather than like suffering in silence and not doing what I want because of the fear of people hating on me.
Yeah, that's a very big extreme where I feel like I'm not at the point where I can say I'm happy with everyone hating me. But, if it were that extreme, I agree. It's like, going back to being the good kid, right? Like, I would be so scared to say controversial or more like gun-ho things in my videos, but then I'd hear Alex Hormozy say it and I'm like, wait, there's someone else who thinks the same way as me. Like, I'm not nearly as successful as Hormozy, but I'm like, wow, the things he says are really blunt and brutal, but that's exactly what I believe in and I want to say too. So like, why am I holding myself back from not saying it, right? And for people who are afraid of selling, I imagine a lot of YouTubers, they would like listen to this, having started from YouTube. Maybe they have a following. Maybe they want YouTube as their primary source of marketing. So something I learned is that nothing comes free. It's not possible to give people free, valuable content and then you are just like rich or financially well off because of it. There's an imbalance here. Who is profiting the most? YouTube. For sure, like the platform, right? And so over time, why I was like struggling and feeling very unstable financially, which a lot of other creators are discovering now, is that like there's an incredible imbalance of power and exchange of value, right? And so you have to take it into your own hands to be like, I can't let this platform be in charge of my whole livelihood. I need to have some control and more equity of my audience. So in every single video, I need to have some of that mind share for my audience that like, hey, you're not watching this video for free. You're seeing an ad, which some of the ad money goes to YouTube, but you're also seeing a promotion of my stuff. Like if you're going to watch my video and get content, like valuable content from it, you better be also aware of like my product. Now I'm sounding so blunt and brutal, but that's the truth, right? Like I have to get something from it myself.
I think people are so entitled nowadays, honestly. I think like there's so many people out there who expect everything to be for free. They think if they watch a YouTuber and if that YouTuber launches a product that they won't even buy, they feel the audacity for this person to charge for something and they go and hate on them. Because it's like, how could anybody charge anything for something? Everything in life should be for free, right? And it's just a terrible, poisonous, cancerous mindset from these people. And those people will never be business people, because if you want to make a business, you charge for something. And these people are paying for Netflix. They have an iPhone, so they're fine giving money to big corporations. But when a small business or a creator launches something, they're the first to rail against that. So yeah, I think it's I feel like there's a reckoning due for selling online. I think anytime you see a YouTuber who's like anti-selling, it's like I've seen this multiple times. Within 1, 2, 3 years, they're selling a product, because you cannot make it as a creator. It's very, very, very difficult to make it as a creator without either selling your own product, selling someone else's product, or do something like that. Like you have to be selling. And I feel like if you have that internalized disgust of selling, it kind of shoots yourself in the foot.
Yeah, for sure. The people who agree with you selling in the comments, you can tell they're like business owners, or they're like smarter or have an open mind about how the world actually works, right? And something else I also don't like is when people promote using AI. For example, in my upcoming video, I'm like, guys, you have to learn how to use AI, leverage it now, right? I realized, oh my gosh, I'm probably going to get some negative comments like, oh, but it's bad for the environment. How could you be promoting AIs replacing humans? But that's not my point, right? Like AI might have some environmental impact, right? But like, we are not rich people who can sacrifice so much of our own like well-being for like the goodness of the whole world, right? It's like the system we're in, right? If we're going to talk about system and like what people are stuck in, right? If you buy an iPhone, you're supporting child labor. But like, are you just like not going to buy a smartphone, right? Like, what are you going to do? Like, everything you do has some form of negative impact on someone poorer than you. And that's like the sad reality of the world. And like, if I were rich, I would try to change that, but I'm literally not in a place to be altruistic, right?
Whenever I hear someone say, oh, don't you know ChatGPT is so bad for the environment? I'm just like, pull out your phone. Oh, I see an iPhone there. You know that phones are bad for the environment? You know, like iPhones are created with slave labor. You know that flight you took last month made more carbon emissions than 10 million careers on ChatGPT, right? I think most people who say that, it's just a judgment thing. They actually can't even tell you the stats. I have not met one person who's told me AI is bad for the environment that can actually give a logical, coherent, factual argument why, right? And also, those people are also creating several environmental issues in their own life too. And they're just like calling out this one thing that someone else is doing. I've heard it said that if you care about the environment, you should just die. Not like actually, but like if you want to actually have no environmental impact, then the only way to do that is to not exist. As humans, we are the ones who create negative impacts in the world. So I think I prefer when someone is like brutally honest about it. We're just like, yeah, like I do this, you know, I create this impact. I feel like for me, I feel that like, oh, I need to like guard my words here. People are going to come after me. But like, it's a simple fact. Like I do things that are bad for the environment. I do things that like people are upset about. In my videos, I'm extremely brutal and straightforward. I straight up tell people you don't have a job because you're bad and it's your fault. And people hate it. But I just really align a lot more with like the harsh, brutal truths. Because I feel like one reason why we both resonate with Alex Ramosi.
Yeah, might as well benefit from it, right? And the other day, Sean said this idea. He was like, I forgot what the idea was, but it was like, oh, wouldn't this be great for the environment if all the companies just did this? And I was like, but that's going to make them lose money, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, that's why they're not going to do it. Because I used to be like more naive and idealistic, but I think I've grown a little more cynical having learned what the world is like. And so everything comes at a cost again, right? Like if I go and recycle my like cardboard boxes and like I need to break them down, spend time like cutting them open, which I still try to do, right? But it's a sacrifice for myself. And it's just like the reality of the world that like, you know, if you want to not buy from Amazon, like you're going to waste so much time, right? And so it's like, do what you can to still be reasonable. But especially if you're not in a point to buy like sustainable fashion that's like actually sustainable, like don't waste your time worrying about that. And further, don't expect other people to be doing that, right?
There's just so much hypocrisy out there, right? When someone's like, you should only order sustainable fashion, right? Yet they went on a plane 2 years ago. Like I just keep coming back to this, which is like this specific argument with like the quote unquote environment. Like I get it. Like we as a society need to be more sustainable as a whole. But when you start like criticizing people on an individual level for doing like individual things.
Actually, people should be more excited that people are more easily brainwashed now. Because like you said, people will say, oh, AI is bad for the environment, but they don't know why. It's probably because they've seen so many messages about that on social media. So there's even more of, it's even easier for people to have the herd mentality. And so it's actually easier to stand out. And so nowadays, you know, if someone wants to be an entrepreneur and to succeed being more self-driven and to come up with their own ideas, like God forbid, be innovative and think of your own ideas for once and have critical thinking, then it's actually like pretty easy to succeed, I think. You know, people complain about the system keeping them poor, right? But I'd argue that people are the system, right? So if we think, oh, but I have to go to college and this is keeping me poor and in student debt, well, like, why don't we rewire your own system of thinking first and see what's possible if you try to escape the system? And then when more and more people realize this and become successful, well, then the system cannot run anymore, right? So that's the kind of thing that I realized I wanted to say earlier in the conversation that I forgot, but it's about, you know, not having a victim mentality when it comes to the system.
Yeah. The way I think about it is you can do whatever you want. You just have to own the consequences. If you hate college, drop out. Just own it. Own the consequences, right? If you don't want to do this, if you're complaining about, oh, I hate my boss is so annoying, then quit. Own the consequences, right? In life, you really choose whatever you want. Sure, there's like a different imbalance there where like maybe the reason you're staying in a job you hate is because you feel like the consequences are too high. But I think a lot of people have that victim mentality where they think they're not in control, but you really are. You just have to accept that there's going to be consequences to every decision you make. And there's consequences to not making that decision. If you hate your job, like, sure, maybe there's consequences if you quit, meaning like you have to quote unquote put food on the table for your family, but also by staying in that job, you like hate your life or entire life. Like that's also a negative that I don't think enough people realize. But I guess my final question for you here is, what's coming next with you and your brand? Like, what can we look forward to over the next months in this year?
Whew. Well, more conversations hopefully like this, because I'm so excited and pumped up to talk about business and life and health in general. Because I think being the CEO of your own life is being entrepreneurial and living the best possible dream life that you want, and to live ultimately for yourself. And so my content previously was about, studying and primarily targeted towards students, which is funny because if you look at my content, it's not really about studying at all. It's more about life and thinking entrepreneurially. But I think to shift the actual branding and marketing and target audience is to have more people like you, or like more business owners who, I guess, to say bluntly, like would be excited if I sell the product. And that's ultimately how I'm going to be able to keep providing value into the world and helping others. It's by building my own business and selling.
Absolutely. All right, Amy, thanks for doing this yet again.
Thank you, Aman. So many topics we didn't cover, but I'm excited for the next time. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's today's episode of the Liftoff podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you want early access to every single one of these podcast episodes, head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or your podcast app of choice and follow Liftoff with Aman Manazir. That's right. You can listen to every podcast episode before it gets released on YouTube if you go over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or check the link in the description and hit subscribe. And finally, always remember, the night is darkest before the dawn. I'll see you in the next one.